Hello, welcome to the lecture 15 of this course Transportation Network Analysis. So in the last class we were discussing about savings algorithm. So we'll continue that discussion here. Let us see a small example for this algorithm. So consider a graph that has 4 nodes where node 1 is the depot node and each node has unit demand and vehicle capacity is equal to Q equal to 2. Okay. So this is the distance matrix that is given for this graph here. So we have 4 nodes here and the first node was the depot node and the other 3 nodes are the nodes that need to be visited. You can see here that this distance matrix is symmetric, that is the distance to go from node I to node j is the same as the distance to go from node j to node I. So let us find the tours that are constructed using Clark and Wright's savings algorithm. So in that we will first determine the saving list. So for every pair of node we will determine the savings that we get. So once we do that calculation, we put the savings of different pairs in the non-increasing order or decreasing order if they are different. So here you can see that node pair 2 3 has the highest savings, followed by node pair 3 4 and then node pair 2 4. So what we will do here is that we will be connecting these nodes 2 and 3, and while we are doing that we need to ensure that the conditions that we had mentioned in this algorithm are satisfied. For example, these both nodes 2 and 3 are on separate routes because in the beginning we have a single vehicle visits all the 3 nodes, nodes 2, node 3 and node 4, and since they are being visited by single vehicles every node, so they are definitely on different routes, and they are also in either the first or the last nodes that are getting visited by their respective vehicles. And when we add these 2 nodes here, then the capacity constraint is also not violated. So therefore it is fine to connect these 2 nodes 2 and 3. So this is the first cycle that we get here, that is we go from the depot node 1 then to node 2 then to node 3 and then we come back to the depot node, that is node 1. Okay. Now since this capacity Q is equal to 2, it is not possible to add any further node in this cycle here. So the other tour that we will be getting apart from this one will be the one which will start from the depot node, then it will go to node 4 and then it will come back to the depot node. Okay. So these are the 2 tours that are obtained here, and the length of these 2 tours is equal to the distance to go from node 1 to 2, then to go from 2 to 3, then to go from 3 to 1. So here you can see that we have these distances 5, which is the distance to go from 1 to 2, then from 2 to 3 we have 3.6, then from 3 to 1 it is 8.5, and then here we add the distances to go from node 1 to node 4 and then back from node 4 to node 1. Okay. So this is the total length that we get for these 2 tours, which is 24.3 units. Okay. So with this we end the discussion on the savings algorithm. So we now end the discussion overall related to the vehicle routing problems, and now we will be starting a new topic on genetic algorithms. So let us see what are these algorithms. Genetic algorithms are a particular class of evolutionary algorithms that use techniques that are inspired by evolutionary biology, such as inheritance, mutation, selection and crossover. So as we move along, we will get to know the details of these terms. These genetic algorithms became popular due to the work of John Holland in 1960s and 70s. These genetic algorithms are categorized as global search heuristics or meta-heuristics. So we have previously seen this term heuristics, and we had referred to those algorithms for which we do not have any analytical guarantee on how close they provide values as compared to the optimal value. And these meta-heuristics are slightly different in the sense that, first of all, they are not tailored to a particular problem. For example, the savings algorithm that we had seen is a heuristic algorithm, and that one is applicable for vehicle routing problem and so on. So these meta heuristics are not particularly specific for a kind of problem, and they are more general. And also in practice it is observed that these algorithms are able to reach close to the optimal solution. That's why they are also called as global search heuristics. So they provide reasonable solutions to many types of problems because they ideally do not make any assumption about the problem structure. So the way these algorithms operate are not relying on a particular problem structure, and therefore they are more general in nature as compared to the heuristic algorithms that we have seen so far. So before we discuss about genetic algorithms, we need to see what is the motivation for the genetic algorithm. These genetic algorithms are motivated from the concept of evolution, which is the process by which modern organisms have descended from ancient ones. And then there is this concept of microevolution. So it is evolution within a single population. So a population is a group of organisms that share the same gene pool. And there are very important aspects of evolution such as heredity, genetic variations, and differential reproduction. So we will see them one by one. What do these mean? So for evolution to occur, the information needs to be passed on from one generation to the next. So this is called heredity. The information here refers to characteristics or traits through genes. Also, there should be differences in the characteristics of individuals for changes to occur, and these are called genetic variations. And there are three kind of mechanisms that result into genetic variations. One is mutation, then the other one is gene flow, and then we have reproduction. So we'll go through them one by one. So mutation is a random change in DNA. So we must have encountered this term before also, that something got mutated and so on. So mutation can be beneficial also. It might not cause any significant impact, or it can also be harmful to an organism. And not all the mutations matter for evolution. Then the second mechanism that results into genetic variations is the gene flow. So gene flow is the migration of genes from one population to another. So an example here is that we have these red beetles on the left, and here we have a population of brown beetles, and one of these beetles from the left population migrates to the right population, and if the mating happens, then some of the characteristics that were present in this population get passed on to the population of these beetles here. So in this way, these different genes can get introduced from external populations. So this statement is saying the same thing, that if the migrating genes did not exist previously in the incident population, then such a migration adds to the gene pool. And then the next important mechanism that results into these genetic variations is the sexual reproduction. So this type of producing young can introduce new gene combinations through genetic shuffling. So what we mean here is that, for example, if you look at any child and so on, so they have some characteristics which they get from their father, some they get from their mother and so on. So in a way, this kind of reproduction results into genetic shuffling, and we see a different combination of genes which are obtained from the mother and the father in the child. So here in this figure is kind of showing that. So here you can see the child has color which is the same as the father, but the hair pattern is kind of the same as what was with mother. And then until now we were discussing about various kind of mechanisms of genetic variations. Now we will go to differential reproduction, which is also an important aspect of evolution. So this differential reproduction compares the successful reproduction rates of two groups of individuals in the same generation of a species population. Okay. So, this is the central to the idea of natural selection, that is survival of the fittest. The main idea here is that those who are fitter with respect to the current environment, they have higher chances of staying long and mating, and therefore the traits of such groups have higher chances to be passed on to the next generation. Okay, so all of these different concepts that we saw related to genetic algorithms such as heredity, genetic variations, differential reproduction and so on. Similar concepts have been used to devise genetic algorithms. So, for example, this idea of natural selection will be used to kind of give a higher likelihood for solutions that are closer to optimal to get passed on in the next iteration of the algorithm as compared to the solutions which are far away from the optimal. Similarly, this concept of genetic variations is useful because we want to explore different kind of solutions in a feasible region before we conclude that we have found the optimal solution. And for that, in order to kind of do this search of the solution in a very diverse way across the feasible region, these concepts related to mutation and genetic variations like reproduction are helpful because they introduce diversity in the solutions. Okay, and because of that diversity, we are able to get various kind of solutions which might not be possible if we just stick to the solutions that we started with in the algorithm. So this will become more clearer as we'll move forward. Before we move on further, let me also tell you that where do these genetic algorithms stand as compared to the other approaches for the optimization that we have seen. For example, one of the approaches that we had seen to solve general integer program was this branch and bound method. So, branch and bound method is an exact method to solve integer programs, but we had seen that one limitation there is that in the worst case scenario, the computation time that it might take might become too large if the problem size is significantly high, because in the worst case the branch and bound might end up becoming an exhaustive search, that is, it might become the same as the enumeration technique. So, in enumeration we list down all of the solutions that are possible, all the feasible solutions, and then we select the one which is the best. But as we have seen, the number of solutions can increase exponentially large as the size of the problem increases, and that's where that kind of approach is not good. And then we saw other category of algorithms. Some of them were approximation algorithms. So these algorithms had some guarantees attached to them with respect to the optimal solution that they give. For example, these algorithms, although may not give optimal solution every time, but there is this guarantee that they will give a solution which is within a factor of something as compared to the optimal solution. So, for example, the MST based algorithm that we had seen for the TSP, that had a factor of 2, and after that we had seen some heuristic algorithms. So these kind of algorithms, unlike the approximation algorithms, do not have any guarantees attached with them, and but these algorithms are still useful because they might work very well in practice, even though for complex problems we may not be able to get guarantees on how close they provide the solution as compared to the optimal solution. And then we are now talking about these genetic algorithms, which are meta heuristics. These genetic algorithms also do not provide any analytical guarantee that how close they will provide the solution as compared to the optimal solution, but it has been found that they work quite well in practice for very complex problems also, because they have some particular properties which do not usually exist with these above traditional approaches. One of them is that these genetic algorithms always work with a set of solutions in each iteration. The set of solutions is called the population. So we always have a kind of a set of solutions from this feasible region that we work with, and these genetic algorithms are probabilistic algorithms or randomized algorithms. And since they use some operators such as mutation, crossover which have been derived from this concept of evolution, they have the property of generating solutions which are diverse and are picked from variety of places in the feasible region, and therefore the chances of these genetic algorithms getting stuck in local optimum solutions is less. Okay. So that is why these kind of things make genetic algorithms very appealing. Okay, so now let us move on. So now that we have seen the motivation for genetic algorithms, let us see how are these evolutionary concepts used in the genetic algorithm. So in genetic algorithm, the evolution usually starts from a population of randomly generated solutions, and it happens across generations. Okay. And in each generation, the fitness of every solution in the population is evaluated, and then multiple solutions are selected from the current population based on their fitness and modified to form a new population. So once we have a population in a given iteration or a generation of an algorithm, so we will be using this term generation and iteration interchangeably for genetic algorithms. So once we have a population in a particular iteration or generation of this algorithm, then in the next iteration we use a method called selection, where we select a new population, and while we are selecting it, we give higher priority to the solutions that are fitter, in the sense that they are more closer to the optimal solution as compared to the other solutions. And that is why this is in the same way or analogous to the concept of differential reproduction, that the solutions that are fitter have higher likelihood of getting passed on to the next population or next generation. And then this new population that we obtained after selection is used in the next iteration or generation of the algorithm. So we apply different operators like crossover and mutation on this new population, and then we get the final population of the genetic algorithm in that particular iteration or generation, and then we decide whether we want to terminate or not. Okay. So termination criteria has to be set in the beginning. So one of the termination criteria can be that we decide on the maximum number of generations or iterations that we want to run this algorithm. It can also be the case that we decide to stop when a satisfactory fitness level has been reached for the population. What does this mean? For example, if we think that suppose the average fitness value of the different strings in a given population is not changing that significantly across different iterations or generations of the algorithm, then we can decide to stop. Okay. So these genetic algorithms do not have any convergence rule or guarantee, that is they are not guaranteed to provide any solution which is within a factor of the optimal solution, or nor there is any guarantee that these algorithms will converge within a few distance of the optimal solution after a few iterations and so on. But even though these guarantees are not there, they work well in practice for a variety of problems. Okay. And that is why they are called meta heuristics. Okay. So as I had mentioned that in the selection process, the strings that are fitter have higher likelihood of getting passed on to the next generation. So therefore we need to have this concept of fitness for every solution that we have. So fitness is the target function that we are optimizing. So each solution in this genetic algorithm will have a fitness value. So in case of optimization problems, it is a function of the objective function value, and also constraint violations if there are any. Okay. So let me give you an idea here. For example, suppose there are three kind of solutions that we have in a population of the genetic algorithm. The first solution A is suppose feasible, okay, and it has higher objective function value. Suppose it has a objective function value of 1500, okay. Then there is another solution B that is also feasible and it has objective function value of 1400, and then there is this solution C which is infeasible, but it gives an objective function value of 1600. Okay. And suppose this optimization problem that we are solving is a maximization problem. Okay. Now if we compare these three solutions A, B and C and try to rank them that which one is better as compared to the other. So since solution C is infeasible, so it is the worst among all of these three, even though it is giving an objective function value which is higher than both A and B, and therefore its fitness value should be lower than A and B. Okay, now if you look at A and B, among them, since this optimization problem is a maximization problem, solution A should have higher fitness value because it's having an objective function value of 1500 as compared to 1400 for B here. Okay, so therefore the fitness value for A should be the greatest as compared to B as compared to C. Okay, so the fitness function kind of takes that into account. So in order to understand this genetic algorithm, we will be considering a very simple problem which is called max1. So here the objective is to maximize the number of ones in a string of L binary digits. It is a very trivial problem, as we already know the solution. For instance, if L is equal to 10, then the optimal solution is this. So here note that we have a string of L binary digits. Okay, so this is the best solution, but another solution that could have been possible is suppose this 0 1 1 1 0. Okay, so this is also another solution that is possible, but here the number of ones that we have is equal to 7, okay, which is lower than the number of ones that we have here as 10. Okay, now you might be thinking that why do we need to have a genetic algorithm to solve this simple problem, because we already know that this is the best solution. You cannot have more ones than this here. The reason being that this problem is just used to illustrate how does genetic algorithm works. We definitely are not in critical need of genetic algorithm to just solve this problem, as we know the optimal solution. But suppose we did not knew that this is the optimal solution. So if we are to start with some set of solutions, and then if we are to try to reach to this solution, then how will genetic algorithm work? So that's what we want to look at. Okay, so we'll be focusing more on this problem in the next class. Thank you.